Hi dolls! So I have an upcoming video where I plan to have a little bit of a rant and to share my thoughts on Disney live action movies. Spoiler alert, I don't like them. But despite my very strong anti-live action stance, there is one exception. Cinderella from 2015. I love this movie, and since we have just reached its 10th anniversary, that doesn't seem real, I wanted to talk about what I think makes this movie so good, why it stands apart for me from the rest, and really what makes this movie a treasure in my eyes, whilst I all but completely disregard the others. The first reason I'll mention is that this movie simply looks better than all of the rest. I won't go too much into this as there are other videos out there basically making all the points that I would make anyway, but I couldn't agree more that this movie is so much more visually pleasing than all of the others. A big reason for this, I think, is that it was shot on film as opposed to digital. I personally prefer film and I applaud their choice to use it for this movie. It just makes the viewing experience that much more immersive by making it feel more real. The sets didn't look like sets as they often do in other live actions, at least in my opinion. With this movie, every scene feels as though you are truly there witnessing these events. The costume design also plays a huge part in this, of course. The amount of detailing that went into every costume is absolutely astounding to me, and it makes it believable. None of the costumes have this real costumey or cheap look, like some of the other movies tend to do, in my opinion, especially when it comes to the main princess dress. None of the clothes in this movie really stick out to me in a bad way. But of course, speaking of princess dresses and standing out, this dress, I think it's safe to say that it stole all of our collective breath as viewers, and for many of us, it still owns our hearts. It is an absolute dream. This dress alone brings so much of that whimsy and ethereal feelings that we want in a fairy tale film. I don't think that it's possible to top what they have done here, as this is the most beautiful dress of all time. But it's sad to me that they haven't at least tried. All the other princess dresses, in my opinion, absolutely pale in comparison. Their choice of shot angles, the excellent usage of colours and lighting in all of the right places, in my opinion, are also huge things that add to the absolute visual splendour of this movie. It is just so stunning to watch, and it simply feels more real and more beautiful than the rest. It is also a treat for the ears as well as the eyes. The soundtrack is stunning, filled with beautiful scores that enhance every scene. It does what music is supposed to do. It makes you feel. The music truly enhances the emotion of the story in every scene. It's perfect. Lavender's Blue was such a sweet touch, and Strong, the song from the credits, is without a doubt one of my most played songs. It is both powerful and sweet, the very essence of Cinderella and her story, and it's one that I can truly sing with my whole soul. Everything about the music of this movie is perfect. Another reason that I love this movie so is, of course, the casting choices. I don't think there was a single person in this movie who didn't fit so well into their role. Lily James brought Ella to life in the most perfect way possible. I think that she really captured the essence of the character to a T. She has also had a really good attitude towards the character that she plays, and a kind of understanding of her true nature and what the story really means. I can really respect her for this. Portraying Ella seemed to come so naturally to her, and it makes you really believe in the character. Not only that, but I love how Lily James was a relatively unknown actress at the time, and it's through this movie that she has become a star. It is such a rare thing for Disney to do this. With almost every other movie that they do, they choose to cast big name actors or singers rather than actually considering who would be best for the role. They do this for all of their animated films now as well, and I honestly think it's very poor, lazy taste. Somehow, they did well for this movie though, and I am so glad. I couldn't think of a better person to have played Ella. The same goes for Richard Madden as Kids. I love that he wasn't as big of a deal fame-wise at the time either, but he was the perfect fit for the character given to him. And honestly, what a truly wonderful character that is. I think it's fantastic that they decided to give him a name and a story, and a truly believable one at that. He looks the part, he plays the part, he is the part, okay? I also love the character of Kit's father, the king. I'll admit, this is probably one character I do actually prefer over the original. In the animation, he is portrayed as very silly. In Cinderella 2015, his character is more serious. Now, this does seem to be a trend in the majority of live-action adaptations of Disney stories, and personally, it's one that I quite like. I think the silly character was perfectly fine for the animated film, but for live-action movies in general, especially for the direction that they were wanting to go with even the prince and his character and just the general story of this film and the way they wanted to tell it, I think it was better that they gave the king a more serious and thoughtful character. And as they tend to do in a lot of Disney live actions, they do tend to make them a little more serious, which kind of just suits the live action form, I guess. This movie does have great humour though in its own right, but I think it's well placed, perfectly timed and tasteful. Not all live action movies can do that well, but they pulled it off perfectly with Cinderella, in my opinion. Ella's parents were also perfect casting choices. I don't know what else to say on them, because I guess I could just say so much, because I love them so much, and I'm so glad that they were chosen to have a bigger part in the telling of this story. Cate Blanchett is probably the biggest name from this casting, I think, and I certainly don't mind since I am a fan of her. She is perfect in just about every role she is in. I certainly find her less frightening than the depiction of the evil stepmother in the original animated film, at least in more of an upfront kind of way. In another sense, she's almost more terrifying as her cruelty is very subtle, but very real nonetheless. Now, I'm typically not a fan of the villain backstories, as it were. However, I think it can be justified when it is done well. And of course, I think this movie does it well. When Ella asks why is she so cruel, you can feel her pain. It's like you're screaming the same question on the inside and demanding that answer too. At the same time, you can also kind of feel a sympathy for the stepmother when she gives her reasons. However, as almost understandable as her reasons may be, they are never justified, and I don't believe the movie ever tries to do so. I don't think this is as much of the typical morally grey villain trope that we so often have in, well, almost every movie, but especially remakes and live action retellings. But with this movie, I think it's simply showing more complexity to these very human characters. I think that there was room to do that with this story and this character in particular. And again, I think they did it very well. You find that you can somewhat feel for this character, but you still don't like her. You still want her to pay the consequences of her cruelty and get her just rewards in the end. This doesn't work for every villain, but I think it does for this one. I can see what they were going for with this small addition to the story, and I can really appreciate it. There are so many things that I love about this movie that I could probably go on for at least a few hours. However, the main thing that makes this movie so treasured to me is, of course, the story. More than anything, this is what the most important thing is in any film to me. It is, after all, the whole point of a film. There are many ways to tell a story, of course, and all the things I have already mentioned previously have their part to play in that. I like to gather all these things, and when I look at the movie as a whole, I can judge whether or not they are telling a good story, a story worth watching, especially when it comes to an adaptation of a story that has already been told. For Disney today, and many others, capturing the true essence of the original story in the retelling doesn't seem to be all that important to them. However, I believe it is quite critical to get this right. Most modern retellings seem to have one simple aim of deconstructing the original story. They end up taking so many things away that it no longer holds the true essence or meaning of the original. And at that point, why not just create a whole new story? Now, I'm using the word retelling a lot, but the main word used, and I guess the most appropriate one, is usually a remake. Now, I believe that's fitting for most of the Disney live-action movie adaptations, but what I love about this movie is that it really is more of just that, a retelling over a remake. Yes, there is a big difference. I truly believe that this movie captures the true heart of the Cinderella story, where so many others have attempted and failed. I think it does improve on the original in that it simply adds certain elements that maybe were missing before, elements that I knew were there and perhaps so did some others, but this movie makes it clear for everyone to see. What I love and really respect so much about this retelling more than any other is that it added without subtracting. It improved on the original without disrespecting or disregarding it. It's like it saw the original and was like, okay, now let's just go deeper and farther. And it did that so well. The changes made in this movie are more subtle, I think, at least in comparison to the really in-your-face ones from other movies. I personally don't really see any kind of on-the-nose agenda in this film, only the simple desire to tell a good story and delve deeper within it. What they chose to focus on and give more attention to, for example, Ella's childhood and her relationship with both of her parents, which I love so much, by the way. Ugh, nothing touches my heart more. I swear the first 15 minutes of this movie will always have me sobbing like there is no tomorrow. Also, how they gave us the prince's perspective and more of his story, and having he and Ella meet once before the ball with an interaction where you can literally see how they fall in love. And you believe it. There is also the relationship with the prince and the king, and again the beautiful addition of Ella's mother. Also the actual character of Ella and how they made her strength, which is obvious to me in the original but very clear for all to see in this movie. But they show her strength without taking away her softness, because that is her strength. And that is why she is admirable, and I think everyone involved in this movie appeared to really be able to grasp that. All of this and many more things, they are all beautiful additions to the movie that don't subtract from its core. There is no insulting or subverting the original story in this film, at least not that I can see, and that is a very rare thing indeed. This retelling really did seem to be done with pure and good intentions. That much is clear for me to see, and for that I am so thankful, because it is, after all, my favourite story, and somehow it didn't experience the kind of butchering that almost every other story has. For me, it is absolutely vital that whoever is telling a story needs to do so with love and respect. This movie did just that. It is a project filled with love that truly emanates throughout every theme of the movie. Now, I personally think the original is perfect too in its own right, in the way that it chooses to tell the story. I definitely don't think one is superior to the other, but the additions and choices made to enhance the story in this version, or to bring to light less explored parts than the original did, I think it did very well. Surprisingly so for its time, and I can honestly say that I love both versions. But I will admit that it was only when I first saw this movie that Cinderella actually became my favourite story. There's definitely a lot of depth in the original, but I think it's made so much more clear in this version that really anyone can see it. Hopefully. I simply just love the way they delved deep into certain things, and it truly adds so much value and doesn't take any away. There's something about this movie that struck a chord deep within my very core. Like most things, it came to me when I needed it the most, and it wove its magic around my heart, making a story that I already loved and appreciated all the more so. The main focus of this movie, I think, is really the character of Ella and the promise that she made to her mother to always have courage and be kind. I think that is so beautiful and so inspiring. It's basically the quote that I live by and will for the rest of my life. I love how they displayed that with this character. They showed how strong she is without actually changing anything about her original character. Again, I feel like whoever was writing this really did have the best intentions and maybe a true love for the story, with simply a desire to delve deeper into certain aspects of it. And because of that, we got a thing of true beauty, not a corruption of it, as we often see with most of the movies that have followed. I'm so glad that they treated this story so kindly, it may due to it. They truly struck gold with this one, and I don't know why they never seem to be able to follow this up. If every movie was given the Cinderella treatment, my view on them would be quite different. I have this vivid memory of when this movie first came out, and I would always drive past this one particular window where the movie poster was displayed. It caught my eye every single time. It always drew me, and yet for some reason, I still do not know to this day, I never went to see it in cinema. When I ended up buying the DVD, I could have no idea how much this movie would impact my life and become such a deep and forever part of who I am. I have watched it countless times in the last 10 years since, and it never fails to move me so deeply and find a way to bring me back to myself. Everything they did with this movie makes it so easy to be transported into the world of the story. There's nothing distracting about it visually, character or story-wise, and that just makes it the perfect world to get lost in. Which is definitely what we want to happen when we watch a fantasy/fairy tale film. At least I know I do, and whenever I come out of that world, I come out a little stronger with a little more courage every time. I can easily say that this is my favourite film of all time. I appreciate it on so many levels, but especially for the way that it makes me truly believe in magic, in love, and in myself. And that is my thoughts on the live-action Cinderella. Feel free to comment and let me know yours as well. What do you think of this movie? Let's talk. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next one. Peace.